Hey guys, welcome to 12-Tone. Today we're going to talk about writing a 12-tone row. A while back, we discussed the rules of 12-tone writing. If you haven't watched that video, I highly recommend you check it out so you know what's going on, because this time we're getting into the artistry of it. How do you take something like this and make something beautiful? Well, that depends a lot on your definition of beautiful. The first step, though, is always to devise your row. More than anything else, this will define the sound of your composition. One interesting thing about rows is that unlike regular melodies, they are finite. There's only so many ways you can arrange the 12 chromatic notes. Specifically, this many, but a lot of those are transpositions of each other. Once you remove those and the other transformations, you're left with this many truly unique rows. But how do you figure out which one is right for you? Well, that's where you get to be the artist. Since 12-tone compositions are often atonal anyway, one interesting way to make a row is just to use a random number generator. This will almost certainly give you a completely dissonant, hard-to-follow pattern, like this one I just made up. That one actually doesn't sound that bad, but it usually will. Maybe that's what you want though, and there's nothing wrong with that. It can also be a fun challenge to try and make something beautiful out of pure chaos. So if that idea appeals to you, go ahead, knock yourself out. If you want to be a little more deliberate with it though, you have to start looking at intervals. Intervals are the heart of 12-tone composition. Intervallic structure and the relationship between notes serve as a replacement for harmonic structure, and which intervals you use have a huge effect on the sound of your row. For instance, let's take a look at the row we used last time. You may not have noticed it then, but this row contains 5 minor thirds, plus an extra little implied one between the first and third notes. Of course, this is not an accident. Picking a specific type of interval and building your row to include it over and over gives you a lot of cohesion and structure that you wouldn't otherwise have. And you can do this with any interval you like, except, of course, the octave. If intervals aren't enough, you can even build your row out of chords. For instance, these 4 triads have no notes in common, so you can build a row just by arpeggiating each of them. There's not that many sets of chords like this though, especially after you factor out transpositions, so another approach if you want to add some harmony is to overlap chords, like in this row by Alban Berg. Here you can pull out chords when you want them and use the rest to write melodic lines. You can also just include 1 or 2 chords in your row if you want, and they don't have to be triads. You're the artist, you get to make the decisions. Another interesting type of row is the symmetrical row, which is a row where the retrograde and the inversion are the same, like this. Notice how the intervals in the first half are mirrored in the second half. But why would you want to do that? You have so many restrictions already, why give up more options? Well, I guess it comes down to the sort of composer who enjoys 12-tone writing. This is a style for people who love working with restrictions. They want things to be difficult so that they can conquer them, and taking away half your transformations when you've only got 4 in the first place, that makes things a lot harder. It also provides another form of structure, with the palindromic shape providing an additional framework. So if you're looking for a challenge, symmetrical rows are a great place to start. Which leads us to our final technique for the day, the derived row. These are a little weird. To make a derived row, you start with a seed. This can be 2, 3, 4, or 6 notes. In order to build the rest of your row, you take this seed and apply transformations to it. For instance, let's start with this seed. That's a nice simple melody. We've got a whole step, then a minor third. Now let's try the inversion. If we transpose that up a bit, it gives us this. Now let's add the retrograde and transpose it here. Finally, let's do the retrograde inversion, which transposes nicely into the last 3 slots we have left. In this way, you've incorporated all 12 notes, but the whole thing is built on just the first 3. Why would you do this? Again, that comes down to the sort of person who enjoys 12-tone composition. If you find this sort of structure appealing, then it makes sense that you'd be drawn to the idea of structure within structure. It also has some nice properties in terms of transformation resistance. Derived rows maintain a little bit of their identity even when you transform them, because somewhere in the transformation will be the original seed. This gives you more coherence without monotony. Not every derived row will include every transformation, but even just a couple will give you a really interesting grounding effect. And that's how you write a row. Try the exercises, join our mailing list for scans of this and every episode, and keep on rockin'.